Words are very important when we describe food, and this is done by a restaurant and hotel constantly, for example for the words you use in the menu, or also for the advertising you may do in many forms including social media, as well as the description that waiters gives to customers. So words are very important because activates several brain areas connected to creative appetite. A very ancient study from 1972 from Stats and Hammond demonstrated that food words, if compared with non-food words, can increase salivary response, so actually increase the appetite. So also when you mention your dishes or your food option, always use the direct name of the ingredients. Do not talk them generally about dishes or main courses or first courses, because this will create less appetite than other descriptors that includes words of food. And this is one basic suggestion. There are many other things you can do in order to encourage the appetite of your guest. There is one study, and this study is done by Papis in 2013, in which this researcher and his colleagues tried to understand which adjectives create more attention in guests. For doing this, he used an experimental condition and a theory called the simulation of concept theory. This theory tells that when you mention a word, the person will activate a series of associations with these words, will not think only to the word, but also about contextual association, or association connects it to perceptual factors, visual aspect, characteristics, and the context in which that specific object is included. For example, if I say car, you will think to the highway, you will think to the functionalities, to the engine, to the rapidity. Every word creates association. In other words, there is a simulation of that concept. The same happens when we mention food. If I mention a food that you like, you will associate it with positive emotions, context in which you eaten that food, specific features, flavor expectation, texture, temperature, many other things. Papis and colleague in 2013 compared the descriptor that people use for tempting food compared with non-tempting food. So for example, hamburger is tempting, pizza may be, ice cream also, chocolate is tempting. Other types of food are not tempting, like rice or apple. Papis identified that if we have a temptation about food, we will describe in a different way, and maybe we can use the same word for sustainable and healthy food. So what happened is that Papis and colleagues done a qualitative analysis on this data and showed that there is a big difference on the ways in which we describe tempting food. First of all, when a food is a temptation, we use much more aspects connected to the taste expectation, so we remember very well and we describe very well the taste expectation, the temperature, and also the texture. It's something we mention much more. Another thing that people use much more while talking about tempting food is the hedonic aspect of food, so pleasure and the expectation of the positive effect that the person will have by eating that food. And also another thing that people do much more often and can memorize much better are the context in which that food is eaten. In the second experimental condition, participants had to describe non-tempting food like rice or apple. In this case, the research showed that people remember much more the visual aspect and not the taste expectation, and much more mentioned the non-eating situation in which the food is included. For example, people remembered mostly the visual aspect of rice and apple and not the taste expectation, because they don't expect to eat, because they eat less frequently. And also was mentioned much more every non-eating situation. For example, for some vegetables, the participants mentioned the agriculture part. For example, the cucumber are grown in the ground or the apple is green. Not more, because their mind is not expecting or not willing so much to eat that kind of food. How can we use this research in practice? When you describe food, first name the ingredient. Do not use too many abstract concepts or general categories. The more you are specific, the more the person will imagine that specific food and also the positive expectation. Plus, describe always the expectation of taste, the expectation of temperature and texture, and also the hedonic aspects, which can be for sustainable food the positive effect on the long term of eating good food, to feel light, to feel well, to feel very good also after. This is something you can apply not only when you describe the name of dishes in your menu, but teach your waiter also to use this kind of descriptors when a customer is asking something more about maybe a local dish they do not know. Use temperature, texture and taste expectation. Thank you very much. In this lecture we studied how to use words, but in the next one we will study how to favor selection of sustainable food. Through several selling strategies you can use at the table but also during the advertising campaign. Thank you.